Welcome back. We've made it to module number 5. This week we're going to have our focus on economic well-being and community well-being of older adults. We'll be reading chapters 10 and 11 in our textbook, and we're going to be looking at a video by Tom Brokaw. It's about baby boomers. It's called Boomers. Now, this will be a little different. The link will take you to a site where you'll have to use your ASU right or your ASU login. And if that doesn't work for whatever reason, you can also get this on Films on Demand. If you are having technical problems, you can ask for technical support. Let me know. But you can also get this on Films on Demand. Our learning objectives for this week, we have 5 of them. First of all, we're going to be discussing challenges that older adults face when searching for retirement and while they're working to build their retirement income. We're going to ask you to demonstrate knowledge of the various sources of income available to older adults and concerns about their economic well-being. We're going to talk about the living situation of elderly adults, and we know that where we live affects our health and well-being, so important to understand some of the housing options that elderly people have. We're going to discuss the various types of housing and long-term living arrangements for older adults. Many of these have been changing and transitioning over the last, probably 20 to 30 years. Nursing homes were where people stayed as they got older. Not all people, but more people in the population. And today we see assisted living, we see in-home care, we see all kinds of other options that are available to older people and as they age, and think about the kind of communities that are livable and friendly for older adults. And finally, we want you to demonstrate knowledge of housing policy for older adults and how this affects the patterns of homelessness. Let me share some thoughts about our reading this week. In our first chapter 10, we're going to be looking at the economic well-being of older adults. We're going to look specifically at retirement, and retirement is a more elusive or less well-defined point in time in our lives. It used to be that people retired between the ages of 60 and 65, but that's just not true today anymore. People are working longer. In fact, 65 is not the age of retirement for people my age. It's 67 and older, and for those of you who are younger, that retirement age will probably be older and older. Another thing I guess I've already said this, but think about retirement is not one single irreversible point in time. There's many people who retire where I work. A number of people have retired, but they come back to work on a part-time basis. So they take a retirement income and they also get an income from the work that they're doing. So more options about the way you can earn income today as you get older, and while taking retirement and not really retiring at the same time. One of the other things to think about in this chapter also is the impacts of poverty and lower wages that many in our society have throughout their lives. I'm thinking particularly of the African American community and other communities as well, the Latino community, where maybe there's money taken out of their wages, but they're not going to get it back in retirement. Think about the cumulative effect, or the cumulative disadvantage, as our chapter textbook talks about it, that there are fewer resources and fewer options available as people age if they have not had steady income or contributed to retirement accounts. So important thing to think about when we're thinking about the economic well-being of our entire community. And then we move on to chapter 11 and we talk about housing options or community well-being and where you live, and how where you live is really important to our health and well-being. So life space, or where we live our lives, is very central to all of us. How we get to and from work, how we get to and from the grocery store or our entertainment. All of those things come into play when we think about where we're going to live. And what's important about this particular discussion is to think about how our communities are changing. There's a graph in your slides that shows us the graying of our communities and how many people actually live. Almost 30% of the older population lives in the suburbs, and we all know in the suburbs you generally are further away from things like I talked about, grocery stores, places where you go for entertainment, where you get your exercise, where you shop, whatever it is you do in your daily life, well, the transportation options are usually not as available in suburban communities, and we rely on cars. As we get older, we use our cars less. We rely more heavily on transportation. And thinking about all of those things together in terms of life space are really, really important about where people live and how livable a community is for older adults. So that's what we're going to be looking at in the second chapter, or I'm sorry, chapter 11. It's our second chapter reading for the week. But think about that as you, and as well as watching the video, and then think about retirement, and those will all be the topics for your discussions this week. So let me wrap up this week with our assignments. On September 16th, you'll have your regular instructional video quiz. You will also then be doing your initial discussion post. On September 19th, you'll have your 2 discussion points in response to one of your classmates' discussion points, and you'll be doing your chapter quiz. And finally, my tip for this week is get ready for your paper. It's due next week. So I'm going to have you do a couple of things. Not only look at the instructions that are up on our Blackboard site for your paper presentation. Everything you need to know about the paper is located there. The length of the paper, how to present your paper, and very specific instructions for how to complete your paper. And then the following, also next week, your presentation will be due. So this might be a good time for you to practice using VideoThread or some other kind of video presentation. You can do like I do, which is upload YouTube videos, or maybe there's you can use video over PowerPoints. There's a number of different ways that you can put your presentation together using video, but I would suggest practice in advance, or try those links in advance so you don't find yourself scrambling at the last minute to try and get the assignment done. So that's it for this week. See you next week.